keep waiting for you if you had to leave. I would wait a lifetime if you were at sea. I just wanna say that I feel that our love is real. Maybe we should hurry up and seal the deal. Oh, oh, I just wanna love you right. Oh, oh, love you till the end of time. I just wanna hold you for forever. Every day you're making me better. 'Cause a love like this is rare, and I wanna take you there. I would give it all away to do it all again. Make our love a story that would never end. Never thought I'd feel so alive, looking in your eyes. I just wanna love you till the day I die. Oh, oh, I just wanna love you right. Oh, oh, love you till the end of time. I just wanna hold you for forever. Every day you're making me better. 'Cause a love like this is rare, and I wanna take you there. If I'm gonna love somebody, I just wanna love you. If I'm gonna love somebody, I just wanna love you. If I'm gonna love somebody, I just wanna love you. If I'm gonna love somebody, I just wanna love you. Oh, oh, I just wanna love you right. Oh, oh, love you till the end of time. I just wanna hold you for forever. Every day you're making me better. 'Cause a love like
Hello, everyone. So good to be with you on a Tuesday. I don't know if you can tell, but it's sunny in Ashland. We have had just the worst smoke. We've been back inside in hazardous air for the last week plus, but a cold front blew in this morning and it's blue skies and wow, it's amazing what fresh air does for your mood. It's pretty awesome. Sadly, it's just water in the cup, Stephanie. Hydration, you know, it's my theme. It's my summer theme. I should have a fun cocktail or something next week for our live next week. I'll have something fun because we're going to have a party for next week. So I am so glad. Lillian, you came up from a trip and you had, you listened to this song on the way home. That's awesome. So great. I love it so much. Lillian, you sent me the sweetest note. Thank you so much. I admittedly am pretty easy to cry a lot of times, but I totally teared up reading it. So I'm super excited. I know. So thank you. Anytime I get a note in the mail, it's so touching and beautiful.
Do you need to take a minute? Or are you going to cry now?
I might. The tech guy knows me too well. I am the one in our family. I mean, I am in a family of, you know, all men. And I'm always the one that's, you know, sobbing my way through Hallmark commercials or I don't know, just commercials in general, but no. Oh, right back at you, Lily. I love you all so much. It's just been such a delight to get to create this community together. It's amazing. Oops. So tonight, hi Nancy, hi from Pennsylvania. Tonight we're going to talk about writer stuff, but we're also going to talk, I'm going to answer writer questions, but I'm also going to talk about some of my writing process. I have some funny insight on covers to share with you at one point, which was a question that someone brought up. So even if you're not a writer, and even if you just want to write as a form of expression or, for your own self-care, tonight's live is for you. You don't have to be someone who is aspiring to write a book. If you are, that's awesome. I will try to answer those questions too. But don't feel intimidated like, oh, you can't participate in the live because we're talking about writing, because we're going to talk about all of writing and everything that it encompasses, more like the writing life. I don't know if you saw this or not, but I think maybe I just posted this on Instagram, but I had my annual eye exam last week, and I went into the eye doctor, and, he was checking in and saying, like, if you have any issues with your eyes. And I said, the thing is, my left contact has been super funky lately, and I have an astigmatism in my left eye. So contacts are not always the best solution for that, because if I blink the wrong way, it moves around in my eye. Fun fact for any of you who are fans of the Bake Shop Mystery Series, Jules cannot wink in the series, and that's partially just because I'm so terrible at winking, and I need to blink more when I'm on screen time. Anyway, I digress. So I say to the doctor, yeah, my left contact, it seems like every time it's drying out really fast. Long story short, we do the whole eye exam, and my left eye has changed 3 degrees. There's a big change in my vision in my left eye. It has nothing to do with a wonky contact. And so we go through the whole exam, and my eye doctor's, looking at film and making sure my eyes are actually healthy and there's nothing else going on. And fortunately, he doesn't see anything that's worrisome. So then it turns into this mystery that we're solving together, because he's like, have you been under more stress? Have you changed jobs? Trying to piece together why one eye would have such a shift in vision over the last year and a half. And then this is no joke. He says to me, he's like, have you been spending a lot more time on the computer? And I was like, yeah, hasn't everyone? It's been a pandemic, and I do this, I write on the computer. I actually write on an iPad, which I can't even talk about because the tech guy's been telling me not to forever. He's shaking his head. You're not even going to say anything.
What did Santa bring you last Christmas?
Santa brought me a bigger computer, which I told Santa to send back because I like my little iPad.
But it was a green iMac.
It was a green iMac. Anyway, so long story short, we sleuthed out the fact that I have been spending too much time looking at a small screen, and that is my pandemic problem. So I just thought I would share that with you. That's one of the angst of a writer's life. We spend too much time in front of the screen, and definitely in terms of the pandemic, I don't know about anyone else, but Jamie, don't encourage him. Poor Santa, Courtney, come on, help me out.
No, sure. Yes. We sent it back.
I know.
But what are we ordering now?
Yeah, we sent it back, and now I need to order one because I'm getting a new contact, a new set of glasses, a new prescription, but I'm also going to try to work on not doing this all day long. But I do think that is a truth of writing in today's day and age, because I spend the vast majority of my day like this, and the pandemic certainly exacerbated that, but that was true prior to it. The difference would be probably pre-pandemic, I would be out in the afternoon a lot more, or maybe we'd be doing these kind of events in person. So it's a cautionary tale. Take care of your eyes if you want to write. You spy the new Sloane Krause behind me. Good eye. Ooh, speaking of solving mysteries, Lyn, I'm impressed. Yes, that's coming out in October. And next week, we're going to have a party for Without a Brew. I'll talk about it at the end, and maybe somebody will even get an early copy of that. Let's see. So for starters, I had put out an ask for if there were any specific questions you all wanted me to talk about first. So I've compiled some of those. I'm going to start with that. If you have other writer questions specific to me or about any part of the process, feel free to put them in the comments, and the tech guy will start queuing them up, and I'll get to those after we get through the list of questions that we started with. All right, let's see. Yeah, Marty, your eyes are drier. One thing that the eye doctor really recommended was taking breaks. I set a timer on my watch to stand and move, but I need to do that for my eyes too. The other thing is this section of my hair is always over my eye, so maybe I need to like clip it back when I'm writing.
Oops, not that one. I don't know
What's that? Pandemic problems, totally. I'm with you, Jamie. Oh, and your teeth. Yeah, it's true. I feel like a lot of that secondary healthcare got shut down, and so now we gotta be more intentional. I hope your teeth are doing well by this stage. You gotta be ready for Halloween season. Those caramel apples. All right, so without further ado, let's start getting to some questions, some writer questions. I'm ready. Okay, so Becky asked, how do you start? How do you come up with the first sentence? Whew, Becky, if you only knew that every single writer in your shoes has that same experience all the time, no matter what. So that's what I want to put out there first. If you are someone who has an idea for a story or wants to write and feels that urge and need to write, but you don't know where to start, that is so normal and common. I think one of the things that happens then is that shuts people down from actually taking the next step because there's so much pressure in that. Like, how do I start? What's the first sentence? And then, you know, you can spiral from there. So I have a few things I want to talk about on this particular subject. The first and foremost is don't start big. Start small, like narrow your focus. I think it can be so overwhelming to go from the idea of like, I want to write a book to how do I write a book, right? That is like, you know, we're talking about one sentence to 300 pages in a book. And sometimes starting with a book is not always going to be the final book that then gets sent out into the world. So when I say narrow your focus and start small, start with like a short story. Start with writing an article for a newspaper or a magazine, or do a blog post. Start with something very small and manageable and something that is also going to build some success, right? We want some wins when we're early on in the writing process, because trust me, no matter where you're at in your writing career, you're going to meet pitfalls along the way. Still to this day, I have multiple series and multiple books published, and I still am learning and challenging myself and failing all the time. So I think it's important early on to establish some wins. So instead of trying to start giant with how do I write a book, start smaller and maybe take a piece of that idea. You know, maybe you have an idea. Jamie's in my mind because Jamie is a super duper Halloween fan. I'm not calling you out on that, right, Jamie? That's like common knowledge. Anyway, so let's say you have an idea. A candy apple is in my mind now too. So let's say this idea pops in your head for a story involving a candy apple, and you think that's going to be the launching point for a mystery and someone's poisoned that candy apple. Well, maybe it is, but instead of trying to tackle that entire storyline, maybe you just write a short 2-page story about that apple and its evolution, and then you tuck that away. And that becomes a starting point. So I think that's one of the key things and one of the places where a lot of new writers fall, because it is daunting to start with an entire book, especially if you don't know where you're going. The second piece of that I want to talk about is that getting help is important. I think the idea of writing, because it's something like 87% of the population say that they want to write a book, which I think is amazing. Like, how great would the world be if 87% of the population actually wrote a book? It would be amazing. Like, we would change the planet. We would just elevate everyone, because the act of writing helps you get in touch with so many things, and sharing our stories and our world views like can totally shift things. I'm a huge believer in that. But the reality is it's something like less than 7% actually finish the book. And this again goes back to the idea of it feeling too overwhelming. So when I first decided I wanted to start writing, well, I should back this up. I started writing in 2nd grade. I wrote all the way through middle school, through elementary school, bad poetry, stuff that I still have in my closet here that will never see the light of day. All these shorter things that I encourage you to start working on, even if it's just writing in your journal. Like maybe you make a commitment to writing in your journal every day, or if every day feels too daunting, write in your journal once a week to start. And you're not editing yourself as you go. This is just going to be your process for getting in touch with that writing muscle. When I made the shift in my early 30s, the first book that I wrote was a memoir. I took every workshop, every class. I partnered with a mentor teacher. I hired professional editors. So if you're wanting to write in terms of a craft, the other important thing that I think you need to do is invest in yourself. And that can mean financially. It might mean that, like for me, I spent, I don't know, a few thousand, probably more than that over the course of time, attending workshops and classes and just learning and growing and absorbing everything I could, and reading in the vein that you want to write is so important. You can also do that in lots of ways these days through YouTube videos. I mean, there's so much information out there that you can compile and kind of become a student at the same time. But if it's something that you're serious about, like make that investment and commitment in the process, because this is not a path that is easy to go on your own. And I don't know many writers who don't have a lot of other people around them supporting them. That's what you always see in the acknowledgments. It's not just like me and my brain spinning. I mean, it is when I'm doing this and my eyes are crazy. But there are so many people along the way that have helped me, which is one of the reasons that I ended up wanting to do my Mystery Series Masterclass and share and teach everything that I have learned. And I do coaching too, one-on-one, for that same reason, to try to help new writers form that path. But yeah, that's a big answer for starting small. And then the second piece of that is, Christina says, this is my problem. I always want to go big. Yes, right? I think it's one of the most common things. And if I look back to those bad poems, and I know I've shared this story before, but so I apologize to those of you who've heard it, but it's so perfect because the title is terrible. But I started my first novel when I was pretty fresh out of college. I think I was in my mid to late 20s. And I had just this idea. It was going to be a hospital, and the doctor was going to walk in and realize that this homeless woman had one dead toe. And that was the title that I had come up with for the book too, One Dead Toe. And then from there, I thought at some point in time, the doctor and the woman were going to have some point of connection, but I didn't know what it was. Anyway, I got 100 pages into that, and I just gave it up because I had no idea where the story was going. And that's just one example of many. But I think it's important not to beat yourself up over that too, because everything we write, whether that is in a journal, whether that's, for a blog like I'm talking about, whether that's a clever Instagram post and you decide oh, I'm going to start working on, crafting I don't know, a paragraph or two. Every time I post on Instagram, I'm going to try to have it be a little heartfelt and share this little piece of my writing with the world. Every time we do that, we're building muscle memory. So don't discredit that work either. Because that is my example that I always give is if a physician is going through medical school, they have so many rounds of teaching and practice, and we need the same thing as writers. It's highly unlikely. Could it happen? Yes. And I will be dancing on the streets if it happens for you. But it's highly unlikely that the first book that you sit down to write without any other help or practice or anything is going to be the best book that's ever written. I don't know anyone professionally for whom that's happened to. So I think it's also accepting the process, and part of the process is just getting in there. But going back to that first question, I just think if you can start towing the line, of course, I love it. You're too clever. You're too good. I think if you can just start small and try to give yourself a win, and then do it again, and then do it again, and do it again. I hope that helps. Okay. What's next? Amanda, I saw Amanda. Amanda was a guest before, for anyone who remembers Itty Bitty Delights. She makes the most delightful charms and treasures, and she's just a creative soul. So I think this is such a great question. How do you find the story you want to tell? This really ties into that first question too, because when we're searching for a story, we really don't know where to start. So I think one of the best tools that I use when I'm in that zone is I just start asking myself a lot of questions. It might look like something like this. Maybe you get out a sketchbook or a journal or a giant piece of construction paper, or if you're somebody who is uber digital and you want to create this on a computer, you could do this too. But you just start asking yourself a lot of questions. And I usually start with things like, what if? And I see what comes to mind. That might be something like, what if I'm looking out my window and my neighbors are gone? And my neighbors are so sweet. They leave for the month of August and they go to the beach. My neighbors are amazing. They're in their 90s and they're still like super active and everything, but they have a long driveway. And so it's hard for them to roll the garbage can all the way down the driveway. And so we had offered to go do that for them. And we were going to send Sky Guy, our kid, over every Tuesday to roll the garbage out on the street. And then, because this is Ashland, my neighbor just happened to mention something to the driver of the garbage van, and the driver was like, "Oh, well, don't worry about it. We'll drive down your driveway." So every week they actually like drive all the way down, pick up their garbage, recycling, come back out. So sweet. Anyway, I was writing today and I noticed, oh, the van went down into their driveway, but they're not home. And so, the storyteller in me then is like, oh, well, what's the van doing? Didn't the neighbors tell the driver that they were going to be gone? Is there something nefarious happening? I don't know, whatever it is. Or so just start with a question like that, like, what if? And pull from there, see what can happen. The other trick that I have for starting out with an idea and trying to get in touch with that is doing some guided journaling. So for example, taking that question and asking your writer self, for example, you might say, what story do I want to write? And see what answer you get back and be okay with any answer. Some of this, when we're initially opening ourselves up to the creative process, is that like making sure that we're not shutting that down. And I think that's one of the most challenging things to do as well, because as adults, we've been programmed to edit and filter and make everything perfect, all the way through school. We had teachers who bloodied our homework and our papers. And so that editing voice gets really solid in our head. And what we need to do is try to release and free that. And instead, just open yourself up to any idea. Ideas that are not going to work might appear on the page, but that's okay, because that's all part of building that story. It's like you have to go through the crazy ones to land on that little nugget of gold that's hiding in there. So those are my two best tips, I guess, for starting out and really trying to open yourself up to what story you want to tell. Oh, the last thing I should say about this is think about what you love to read. What you love to read is definitely what you should write. 100%. If you love to read mysteries, maybe you write a mystery. If you love to read women's fiction, maybe that's where you're meant to be. So listen to that voice too. Okay. Julie wanted to know, did I have a plan in my head for Jules all along, or do you follow the twists and turns as they come? That's such a great question.
Wait.
What's that?
You have to tell. Because Cherry just asked, what is the tech I did? Sorry, everybody. I'm Mike, and I got a warning that my computer was about to go to sleep, and I realized that
I was trying to focus.
Yeah, there were like 47 chords here, and the one that was missing was the power cord. So you guys all got to hear me run like through the whole house to go grab my cord. Yeah. So
Oh,
I
that's
apologize.
great.
My apologies.
That could be connected to the garbage van in
Yeah.
your neighbor's driveway. I don't know.
I know. I wish it was a more exciting story, like I was fighting off a bear trying to get in the house, but no,
You never know.
it was a tech guy fail. So
Now you're all breathless.
I know. Yeah.
He's sweaty.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Back to Jules. So this is both. I think initially when we're starting out, it's really helpful to have a lot of structure. This goes back to me saying, like, invest in yourself, do that work, take the classes, take the workshops, find a mentor teacher, find a writing group, find peers, anyone who's willing to give you constructive feedback to help your writing be better. So for me, when I started out with Jules, I had an arc of where I thought her story was going. And I knew that there was going to be this plot about her love life because, come on, she's Juliet. She's the most romantic character of all time, and also the character who is never lucky in romance with a name like Juliet Montague Capshaw. So I knew that was part of it, but I knew that her like bigger journey was more about this idea of home and like falling in love with a place and that love of community. So not necessarily romantic love, but still the theme of love for her. So I kind of knew, I would say like 5 or 6 books in where I thought her romance was going, for sure. I knew from the get-go, and this isn't a spoiler to anyone who's new to the series, but I think you're going to know that she ends up staying in Ashland. Like, of course she does. She has to. But, you know, maybe in the first book, there's like a little hint that maybe that wouldn't happen. Clearly no. It's Ashland. She loves Ashland. So that's part of her growth. But I kind of I had an idea of what was going to happen with her love life. And then as I began to write, and I wrote 1 book and 2 books and 3 books and 4 books, what happens is these characters do take over and they draft the story from there. I will always start with a sketch. I have an idea of where I'm going with every book. I know, an idea about the murder and kind of what I want the background to be in Ashland and the bake shop. And then as I sit down and write, all of these little moments appear. And I have to tell you, 9 times out of 10, whatever the character tells me to do as I'm writing is way better than what I imagined initially. I will say on that, though, that my vision of what was going to happen for Jules is not at all the same as what has happened 13 books in now. But I think it's so much better. It's really been fascinating to me to see that characters can just sort of take up space in our head and live in this way that I never imagined. And I think I've said this before too, but I would go and I would hear writers speak when I was working on writing myself. I would go to every author event and talk at my local bookstore and library, and so many of them would say this. They would say the same thing, and I, in my head, would think, that's kind of bananas. That's not real. That's you. And it really changes. I would say for me, that didn't happen initially. Like for the first few books, that was not necessarily true for me. And then as I got to know the characters better and better, it happens more and more. And now sometimes when I'm here in my office, I'm like, oh, well, hi gang, here we all are. Yeah, it's slightly problematic, whatever he's doing. I have a story about an intruder who leaves Christmas decorations. Oh, yes, that's murder worthy right there. Okay, moving on. Angie wants to know, how do you get published or how do you find an editor? Whew, yeah, that's another big one. It's a whole process, Angie, and some of it depends on what your goal is. Like what is your end goal in publishing? Do you want to be able to share your book with family and friends? Do you want to see your book at bookstores everywhere? Are you happy to be the one who promotes your book? So many questions there. But I think the exciting thing is today, there are so many opportunities for publication that weren't really there even 10 or 15 years ago. The landscape of publishing is changing dramatically. But regardless of whether your path to publication is, I just want to see a finished copy of my book, I want to share it with my family and friends, but I don't necessarily see this as my career, or whether you want to have a career as a writer. you should definitely do the work. So that means research, and again, going to workshops and conferences and learning how to write a query letter, potentially a book proposal, researching agents. If you want to be published with a traditional publishing house, these are the big publishers, you still in this day and age need an agent. Most of the big houses, all of the big houses, don't accept unsolicited manuscripts. So your gateway into the house is through an agent. And that's a process too. There are great things about it. There are pros and cons to every aspect of publishing too. There's no like one magic answer, and there's no one thing that fits every writer. A lot of it is figuring out what works for you. But if you want to be published by a Macmillan or a Kensington or a Penguin, Random House, anyone like that, you need an agent for that. And there's a process that you go through in terms of querying agents and sending them sample pages and sometimes a book proposal. And I think you want to be a voracious student of that process and learn everything you can, because that is going to make you so much more successful. You know, I think one of the mistakes a lot of writers do is they just send out mass queries. Well, that's not going to work because agents have specific guidelines, and that's a whole course in itself. Actually, one whole section of my mystery writing course is on path to publication in terms of how you get an agent, how you find book deals, all that kind of stuff. But you can also go with some mid-sized publishing houses. Some of the university presses, the smaller presses, will accept unagented manuscripts. Some presses open up a few times a year. So if you have a house that you're really interested in writing for, you might kind of watch, because some houses will say have like an open submission period in March. So you can like follow along and get your package ready so that you can send it when they open up for that. And then there are also all kinds of paths in terms of publishing yourself and going the independent route. And the pro of that is that you're not paying agent fees. The con is you're probably not, well, not probably, you're definitely not getting any sort of advance money. And distribution is different. You're going to be the one that's out there selling your work yourself. And if you're somebody who is a go-getter and excited about that part of the process, that's awesome. The truth of the matter is, anymore with publishing, the vast majority of it falls on the author's shoulders anyway. So, you know, yeah, that's a longer conversation. But I would just say my best advice is do the work, put in the time, do the research, make sure you have an extremely polished everything, especially the manuscript though. You don't want to go out and start pitching agents and have one dead toe that's only 100 pages and is a mess and not ready to go. You want to have a fully polished book that is completely done, that has had lots of other sets of eyes on it, that you have edited multiple times, that is clean and pristine. Okay.
Those for the last one.
Oh, yay, Julie. I hope it helped. Of course. Okay. What else have we got? Marie wants to know, how do you balance writing multiple series and why the pen name? For me, writing multiple series was not anything that I envisioned doing at all. That it all kind of came about because my agent initially, he had this opportunity for me to write another series when I was already writing for Kensington. And I said yes, not knowing how to write really one series at that point in time, let alone two. But I think the gift has been that I am the kind of writer who has a really hard time detaching myself from the story. When I am in a story, I am all in. That's why, like, I don't like the tech guy even upstairs, right?
No,
like, stay away from my office.
I have my own little dorm fridge downstairs.
Totally. When I'm in that space of creating, like, I really do feel like I'm living in Jules' world or Sloane's world or whatever I'm writing. And so my whole office becomes that, and I really try to immerse myself in that process. But so that's a pro, but like everything, a pro is almost always the reflection of the con, right? The yin and the yang. I have a hard time sometimes taking myself out of that headspace. And I don't even mean in terms of like day to day. Like when I'm done writing for the day, I can usually leave it here in the office and go do other things. But if I'm working on a book, every time I come in to work on it, I'll be overthinking it too much. And so the gift of writing another series is what I will do is I'll finish a book, I'll finish a rough draft, a terrible bad manuscript, set it aside for a while, for a couple months usually, and work on something else. And working on a new story totally takes me out of that old story. And so then what I can do is I can come back to that really bad first draft with totally fresh eyes and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's working. Oh no, that's not working at all. And then I can really fix it. So I think that's how I balance it. Knock on wood, I have not gotten to a point where any of my worlds have crossed because they all feel so real to me. But I'm not ruling out that it couldn't happen. In terms of a pen name, a lot of that is contractual. I was already writing for Kensington when my agent sold the Bake Shop series to Macmillan. And so initially it was sort of this like secret, even though if you look in the copyright section of any of your favorite books, you'll be able to tell if an author is writing under a pen name. It's right there in print. It's not really a mystery.
Because nothing can be copyright under a fictitious name.
Right, because you can't copyright under a pen name. Some authors also write under pen names for privacy reasons. I think there's less of that than you might imagine. A lot of times it will be, I have a few writer friends who write kind of spicier romance and then they write lighter romance. And so they might use a pen name for some of the spicier stuff, or somebody maybe who's writing like true crime or darker stuff and then cozy, not wanting those audiences to get confused. Because, you know, if you come to me to read A Cup of Holiday Fear, you know, this light, cozy mystery, and then suddenly you see Ellie Alexander and it's a bloody Halloween massacre, you might be like, whoa, this is not what I was looking for. So sometimes an author themselves or perhaps the publishing house will suggest, hey, let's put that under a different name so that there's not confusion amongst your kind of core readership. Hope that makes sense. Okay. He's flipping. We got that one. Jess. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is great. I'm so glad you asked this, Jess. Can a book cover make or break a book's success? Well, first, I want to ask you all, what do you think? I mean, we all know the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover, which is true. I don't think we should judge a book by its cover, but I know I 100% do. And I have a visual aid for you that I think I can use to highlight this. Okay, so when I was writing my initial Pacific Northwest mystery series for Kensington as Kate, my agent again called and said, hey, Kensington would like you to write something else. They're thinking like a flower shop in Portland. Are you interested? And I was like, yes, I would love to write that because I have followed Francoise Weeks for many years. She did our wedding flowers. Do you have photos for this? Mm-hmm. Oh, look at this. She is just insanely talented. She's a floral artist and designer in Portland. She did our wedding flowers like 20 years ago, and I have followed her career ever since. And I just think everything she creates is a work of art. And she uses, you know, like berries and nature. And I've done workshops with her on like wreath building, and her artistry is phenomenal. She does these elaborate floral gowns and jewelry, and she's really incredible. In fact,
made out of flowers.
All made out of flowers, yes. 100% made out of flowers. She's incredible.
Organic.
And I love flowers too. So that was a no-brainer. I never want to write something that I don't want to write or that I don't feel attachment to. Yes, Britta, Courtney. Britta and her aunt. And Britta and her aunt, so this series ended up going 2 books, and you'll see why. Britta and her aunt are also loosely based on my best friend growing up, Anna Martins, and her mom, Britt and Henrik, who were from Sweden and Denmark. And so growing up, I loved going to their house because they always had just the most delicious Scandinavian meals and that aesthetic, you know, everything about it. So I kind of mashed those two together to work on that. Okay, so I've given you a glimpse of what Francoise and what I imagined Britta to look like in my mind. I'm going to now show you the covers for these books. Get ready. Okay, this was book 1, Natural Thorn Killer. Now, what I sent my editor were those pictures that I just showed you, plus a million others, because the flower shop was on the Portland waterfront, and, you know, think like European market and fresh flowers and bouquets and greenery everywhere. And then book number 2 is, if possible, even worse, Violet Tendencies, which also is an awesome name, by the way, I think. I love that. This series did not do well. It went 2 books and it got canned by Kensington. I mean, I don't feel like the books were vastly different in terms of quality of writing. I mean, they might not have resonated with people at the same level, but I have to tell you, like, nothing about those covers matches what you see on the inside of the book. And I think you did, Lenny. They're still at Barnes & Noble. That's amazing. I thought they were out of print. Anyway, there's a chance that the story just didn't resonate, but I definitely think that some of that had to do with cover design. So here's another pro and con when you're talking about writing for a big publishing house versus publishing independently. I didn't have any say. The same is true for the other covers in my series. I wanted these vintage Northwest travel postcards with like touches of pink because I know my characters well. Well, I was a newbie author, and the publishing house kind of had a format they used for covers that they felt like sold well. And I never have seen that as a reflection of what's inside. And so for me, if I was walking past either of those covers in the bookstore, I would pass. Like when I look at my, you see kind of The Cure for What Ails You or any of the Bake Shop series, like it has that just, I want to dive into it cover feel. So I personally think, yes, you judge, yes, a good cover can help sell a book. A bad cover can certainly make it harder to sell a book, if nothing else. How's that? Yes. Well, I don't know, because I thought that they were, I haven't seen them locally anywhere, but maybe you can find them. Yeah, ebooks. The ebooks might still be there.
But,
could be.
Yeah, but
just know it's only 2 books, so don't get too attached, because I had a lot of ideas of where that story was going to go, and no, not so much.
So almost everybody agreed with you that they do judge books by their covers.
Right? Yeah.
And then here are their reactions to
right? Thank you, Jamie.
To the covers.
So bad. It's okay. Like, I did not think them kind of meh. Right? I know. It's a judgy free. No, they didn't look like cozies. Yes, it's so bad. Yeah, the titles were great, but the covers, not so much. And it's okay. Like, that's part of the process for me too. I will readily admit, like, I would have loved to write more of that series. I wanted to live in more of Francois' world, if nothing else. I just wanted an excuse to go spend time in her garden studio. But alas, not so much. Marty,
about a dozen people had this same sentiment.
I know. So, okay, again, going with like some of the pros and cons of either side of publishing. If you're with a big publishing house, they own those rights. And so I have really been wanting to get the rights back to my Meg series and potentially to this. My vision is if I could get my rights back to both of those, I would re-release them with my own covers. I have ideas for bringing Meg back for a future story, which I'm working on regardless. I can do that. But even if a book isn't selling well, a lot of times the publishing houses don't want to release the titles back. So that's a whole other story that we could spend a whole night talking on. Okay, let's, is that our last one, or are we?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to go to other comments. Okay. Let's see. Well, we can just start from the top. Yeah, Cherry. Okay, you hate hearing show don't tell from my critique group. What are your thoughts on this? I think if you want to really, so if anyone's unfamiliar with show don't tell, it would be, let's see, let's do an example. The tech guy. The tech guy had a panic attack because apparently his laptop, all I see is him like jumping up and moving around, but I'm doing the live. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep talking. You freak out. All right.
And I forgot I had the mic on. So.
And you had the mic on, so everybody got the ear. Anyway, let's say that I am writing a scene about that. And I say, the tech guy freaked out. I'm telling you what happened, right? I'm saying he freaked out. If I'm writing a scene where I am showing that, I am telling you the tech guy his breathing is labored. His hands are running around, flying off the handle like crazy. There's sweat pouring from his face. His cheeks are flushing with color. That's the difference. Like, showing versus telling puts a reader in the story. Like, if you're just in this lens of telling, it's harder for a reader to find connection with that character, because we want to be able to feel that. We want to be able to experience what they're experiencing. We know what it feels like to panic, right? But if you go, okay, my heart rate started pounding against my chest and my stomach is knotting and swirling, and you get all those good descriptors in there, I think that's super important with writing. That doesn't mean, though, that there aren't any places in a story where you can't tell. Of course, part of storytelling is telling the stories. So I think it's finding that balance and making sure that you're adding in just all that depth and richness to your writing, that sensory experience. Put a reader in the book. You don't want me to tell you that the bake shop smells good, right? Like, what is that going to do? Okay, it smells good. You want me to show you, as you're opening the doors to Tort, that the doors swing open and banana bread and cinnamon and toasted almonds waft out. So, I think try to take that advice from your critique group if they're giving you advice to help make that showing stronger, and play around with it. Like, sit with it, think about those scenes, and maybe you could ask them, like, are there specific scenes? Could you flag them for me where you feel like I'm getting into the telling too much? And then go back and look at those scenes from the lens of, like, standing in it, and how can you use all of your senses to help put the reader there. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay, let's see. Lynn wants to know, how do you know where the line is for solid research versus hiding in the research? Yes. Oh, I might not be the right person to ask, Lynn, for this one. I could be a perennial college student. I love the research so much. I think there's a balance in that. If you're learning something new, let's take the Rose City Mysteries with the terrible covers for a second. If you're learning something new, I didn't know anything about floral design other than just being in awe of Francoise's ability. If you're starting out a book and you need kind of a baseline of knowledge, like, do that. Do what you need to do, just like the bare minimum. Like, you just need to get a B- on the test or whatever it is. Like, do very high level, quick research, even if that's just like YouTube videos or whatever it is that you need to learn. And take some notes on that and have that as you start to write. And then write the book. Finish the book. Have the book be terrible. Have it be a lot more of that telling or just sort of cardboard. And then go back and do the research. And then you can really do a deeper dive into research and bring the book to life. When I'm working on the bake shop, I will come back through 2 or 3 times, and I'll do, like, a movement and, like, a connection level. And then I'll do kind of a descriptive level where I'm talking about the world around her. And then the last thing I do is the food. And then I do a deep dive. But it can be a slippery slope because it's so fun to research. So finding that balance point is definitely something. Tanisha, hello. You have a ton of ideas, really don't know where to start. Please recommend any writing apps or how you get started writing professionally. Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. It's so hard because it can be so overwhelming. I mean, I think, again, going back to narrow your focus, do you know what you want to write? Is there a specific genre you want to write in? If you want to write a mystery, I have a mystery series masterclass. I have coaching that, like, I might be a great match for you and doing something like that. If you want to write a romance, don't come to me. I don't write romance. I would be the wrong person for you. I can give you lots of ideas on writers who are teaching romance, or organizations, the Romance Writers of America, or those sort of organizations. So I think use discernment, kind of narrow your focus. If you're not sure and you just think you might want to write fiction and you need help in the process of that, I would check out maybe like your local community college. See if they have a course on creative writing. Like, start there and just dabble, because what you're going to do in a course like that is a lot of just like short story work and journaling, like I was talking about at the beginning. If you have a specific genre you want to write in, definitely look at joining organizations around that. So like for mysteries, maybe you join Sisters in Crime and you start going to some of their conferences or online workshops. There are a plethora of books on certain topics of writing. So try to narrow your focus. If you don't have a narrow focus, then start just kind of at that initial level of a creative writing class. I really love, if you're just starting out, this book has been around for 20 or 30 years. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia, it's on my other shelf, Julia Cameron, right? I've done it multiple times. It's incredible. It takes you through the process of opening up. So if you're just wanting a starting point, I highly recommend that book. Shannon wants to know, I'm writing my first mystery. Yay! You're having, whoa, I lost it.
Oh,
uh-oh.
Do this one.
Okay, we'll come back. The tech guy's going to find that one. He clicked it off. Lillian, when writing, do you imagine yourself as the main character? If so, does it make it easier for the to get the dialogue and the story out? Absolutely. I think especially when we're first writing our mystery, we are, and ultimately, all of the characters at some level are little pieces of us on the page, right? But I know when I was first writing every single one of my mysteries, like for my Pacific Northwest mysteries, I was really tapping into my 20-year-old self, where I was backpacking through New Zealand and Australia and maybe not making super mature decisions all the time. When I was writing Jules initially, it was a lot of like baking and thinking about family and connection and home, and that piece of me really came through on the page. What I did is, after I wrote the first draft of Meet Your Baker, the first book in the Bake Shop Mysteries, I went back and read it and I was like, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. So I think do that first, like write yourself on the page. And then once you get a first draft, you can come back to it and you'll kind of start to see. And then the other thing that happens, if you spend time working on character developments, you'll begin to learn like quirks and habits and things that make them unique. Some of that is also going out into the world and observing other people. I spend a lot of time doing that too. But this also tracks back to what I was saying at the beginning. I think the longer we're in that story, as we go back and edit again and again and again, the characters then, they're going to tell you, you know, it's like what I was saying, where Jules was suddenly like, oh no, I'm going this way. Like, thanks for your input, but actually I'm here. What starts to happen is that same thing. That character who initially might have been you then starts to expand. But I do think using that tactic initially can be really helpful, because it's easier to be in your own head with like dialogue and how you might respond to someone. Okay, let's see. Liz wants to know, not really a writer question, but if you're a bibliophile, what are some jobs where you can be around authors and books all the time? Oh, Liz, you're living my life. Well, so many choices, right? Obviously, like working in a bookstore, working in a library. I think one of the really fascinating trends right now is audiobook narration. I don't know if you have any interest in that, but there's a big resurgence of interest in audiobooks. And it's one of those careers that, kind of like writing, you could take a couple online courses, watch some YouTube videos, set yourself up with a nice pair of headphones and a good mic in your closet and just start audio narration. Like, how great would that be? I think secondary bookish bibliophile jobs are things like research, you know? I also think that the next evolution in sort of like author platforms and writing, one thing that I talk to students a lot about is that it's hard, because I ultimately, like, Ellie Alexander is kind of my brand, but I'm a person too. And so it's always hard when you're starting out to go, oh, I have to like market my books. I think there's going to be a huge future market in like author assistance and people helping authors with social media and getting the word out on books and those book connections. I also think you could have a bookstagram or a book talk. Oh my gosh, we could talk about so many book things to do forever. I hope you do all of them. Keep me posted on what you do. Okay, let's see. What's that?
I think it was
Oh, there it is. Okay, we found Shannon again. I'm trying to write my first book, but having trouble finding the time around my family. That's so hard, Shannon. And I hope that we lost your earlier question. So I'm excited that you're writing your first question or your first cozy. Yeah, you do it. That's so hard. So, I mean, a couple things. One, find the time, like carve out that time. What is it? Maybe for you, it's at 7 a.m. for 30 minutes in the morning. Maybe there's a window when one of your kids is napping at 1 to 2 in the afternoon, or for 15 minutes. Maybe it's later in the evening. Initially, maybe it's just 1 or 2 days a week. Maybe you're going to write, sorry, I'm losing my voice. Maybe you're going to write for a full day on Saturday, and you're going to have your partner take the kids for the day, whatever it is. Find a finite window of time and commit to that. And when I say commit. I think one of the big challenges, like knowing where to start and everything that we've talked about tonight, is investing in yourself, like making that commitment to your writing, and knowing that you're not going to, you don't have to write a book in like 2 days and get it done. Your first book is going to take a while. My first mystery took me 3 years. My memoir took me like 4.5 years to write, and multiple iterations and mentorships and everything. So when you find that window of time, whatever it is, whether it's 15 minutes twice a week or 30 minutes a day or a full day on the weekend, whatever that time is, that is your time to write, and no one else interrupts. Like, you find a space in your house that is dedicated to that, where no one else gets to come in. Or if you don't have a space in your house, you go find one. Libraries are great. You can reserve a library private room for a half hour, and that's free. Or it's a coffee shop or a park, wherever you feel comfortable. And no interruptions. So that's also for yourself. That's a commitment you're making in investing in yourself too. So you don't get to say like, oh, it seems really compelling to go do a load of laundry right now, or you have to turn down going out to wine or coffee with a friend. I had to be so regimented when I started writing because I was working from home. And so, friends would be like, well, let's go grab coffee. You've got this flexible time. And still to this day, like, my writing time is literally my writing today. Time. Like, literally today. Yes, literally until 2:00 today, I was in here writing. And it's really easy to let that slip. But if you want to write, like, that more than anything is the key in switching it over. Okay.
I meant still to this day, people think you have flexible time and can just...
Oh, yeah, still to this day. Like yes, 100%. Yes, right. No, I thought you meant writing today. No. But yes, still to this day, I have to keep reestablishing boundaries with people or new people who I meet who are like, oh, well, you write, so let's go to lunch. Nope, that's my writing time. I can meet you at like 4 or 5 o'clock. Like, yeah, just make sure you have really firm boundaries. Find that time. It doesn't have to be all day, every day. Find a finite amount of time and protect it with your life. Okay, I think...
Oops. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Yeah. Oh, book cover design. I didn't even get into that. Yes. So many options, Liz. I love it. I would need to find an author or a story who appreciates an Appalachian accent. That would be awesome, Jennifer. Ooh, okay, let's think about books for you. Did you read... The Book Woman of, Troublesome Creek? I love it. Grr, it's writing time. That's right. Leave me alone. I think we have time for one more question, but I know we have so many more, so I'll try to do another one of these. We're actually in the process right now of brainstorming and finalizing the fall live calendar. So I'll add some of these in. Okay, let's see. What do we got? Tracy. Tracy Anderson. Hi. Do you outline your plot? If so, do you do a high level or detailed outline? Hello. How are you? Tracy, I haven't seen you in ages. Let's see. I don't know that I use what you think of or what we think of as an outline. I think sometimes when we hear outline, it goes back again to that editing red pen teacher from high school or college. And you have to think like, oh, the structure has to be perfect and everything. What I do is I have a whole sketch of the story is more what I do. Story. I don't know why I said it. I have a sketch of the story. And so I know like who the victim is, how the murder happened. I have an idea of who the suspects are. And I think I know who the killer is. And then sometimes as I am writing that changes. A better suspect shows themselves, stands up and is like, no, it's really me. I personally think having kind of a baseline structure to start from is super helpful. There are so many of my writer friends, professional writers who are published and super successful, who are what we call pantsers, where they just fly by the seat of their pants. And I'm in awe and amazed that they can do that. And that might be you too. But my advice is always, when you're starting out, like, do something, even if it's just like a sketch on, your whiteboard or something of ideas and suspects. Like, get something in your head of where the story's going, because I think it makes it a lot easier on you. And then maybe, I think especially when we're writing our first few books, we're learning what works for us. Everything that works for me is not going to work for you, and vice versa. Like, writing, as much as there is structure and ideas and things that you can learn, a lot of it is just doing the work and learning what works for you and what doesn't. So in future books, it might be that then you're like, oh, I don't need that outline. I know now what I'm doing, or that draft or that sketch, whatever it is. But I always recommend, like, start with more than you think you need, and you're likely to find a bit more success, I think. I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. I know, come visit. Bring Roger and all of his delicious food. Tracy's husband has a podcast called the Kitchen Counter Podcast, and they're amazing chefs and foodies and everything. And Courtney, I'm way too type A to do that. I know, right? Let's see. All right, so much we could talk about. I love this. I hope it's helpful for you. I love talking about writing. I love talking about the process. I think it's one of the things that, there's so much mystique sometimes around a creative life. And a lot of it really is like finding structure and good help. And also, more than anything, just like taking that first step. And even if you're someone who's just thinking, like, I just sometimes feel called to write, or I feel like writing might be helpful for my mental health, like, do it. Just go grab a journal, find a journal that is pretty or resonates with you, or maybe even try The Artist's Way. And I think we're all the better for that. I know that when I'm not writing, I can go into a much darker place in terms of anxiety. And over the years, learning to really like embrace that and sharing the words and getting them out of my body is so helpful. So I hope you don't feel pressure to be like, I have to write a book after this. But if we've inspired you just to go like write a paragraph, then yes. All right, so next week we are going to have a party for Without a Brew in paperback. I'll have, I can't remember, maybe Julie said, what's in my water? Just water. I'll have to have a beer or something for that. I hopefully will have some author copies to give away. There might be an advanced copy of The Cure for What Ails You. It'll be fun. And we're going into fall. I cannot wait. I'm so ready for fall weather, all of the things. And then the last Tuesday of the month, the tech guy has been, speaking of fall, crafting away in his basement office. So we have all kinds of fun, fallish goodies for Etsy, and we'll do some giveaways. And then we have a lot in store for live streams in the fall. So I can't wait. Thank you all so much for being such a supportive community too. I think that's another myth that I want to shatter, that if you want to write or do something creative, that you have to be, super protective, or that there's not enough space in the world for that. I think sometimes, I don't know if it's just like lore that has continued to be pervasive over the years, but there's this idea of scarcity, like, oh, if I write a book, then you can't write a book. Well, that's not true. Think about how much you read. I don't just read, like one author. I read every book I can get my hands on. And so I think if you can open yourself up to a mantra of abundance instead of scarcity, it's good, because we definitely need so many more stories in the world. Okay, so on that note, happy writing, happy reading, and I will see you